Hi guys, okay, so this is going to be your second video, and the last video that we went over regarding the Progressive Era, we talked about William Jennings Bryan's Cross of Gold speech. We took an excerpt of it, we examined it, and so to be ready for class tomorrow, I'd like for you to take a second look at that Cross of Gold speech and think about why that speech would have been named Cross of Gold. Take a look at the political cartoon that I gave you and be ready for a question as soon as you walk in tomorrow. So remember that after 1896 and 1900, after William Jennings Bryan lost both of those elections, that was essentially the end of the Populist Party. And so what we're going to look at next is transition into a new movement. Now, this new movement also adopted ideas from the Populist Party. So while it wasn't exactly the same, it fell along the same kind of lines. So if you look up here, it says the Progressive Movement, 1900 to 1920. Now, why is it called the Progressive Movement? Look at the word progressive. You can take the word progress out of there. Now, in the United States, we're making progress from all the problems that we were having during the Gilded Age. And what was a little different about these members of this movement is that you had a new population of people that were noticing the injustices. You had middle class, where you had writers, you had lawyers, you had college professors. And so what they wanted to do was correct all the political and economic injustices that they were seeing in our country. Now, remember, political, when you see political, I want for you to think of government, and in that they believe that a lot of our officials were corrupt. And economic injustices, when you see the word economic, I want for you to think money. So money situation, who was rich, who was poor, who had the opportunity in our country, and they wanted to help fix some of those problems. So the Progressive Movement is a combination of these three types of people that you see here on the right, right next to where it says roots. You have Protestant, evangelist, you have journalist, and you have populist. So see, that's where the Populist Party is coming back in again. Those people that had those same ideas are helping in this movement. They also felt like it was a moral responsibility, especially the Protestant evangelical people. They wanted to help fix society because they felt like that's what God would want them to do. And there were your more scientific people who wanted to take a scientific approach. Now, we'll be looking at the scientific approach in class. So the social gospel movement. What this movement was, it was primarily Protestant clergymen. Now, listen to that word again, clergymen. It's not on your PowerPoint, but a clergyman includes members of the church. So they wanted to help end issues such as child labor. They wanted to create safer working conditions. Okay, and they started looking at helping people more so, whereas before they thought, well, that was just God's will and that's the way it was going to be. These people looked at it a little differently and said, no, it's our Christian duty to help these less fortunate people. And out of thinking like that, you had organizations like the Salvation Army created. So you see here, Salvation Army. Now, these same social gospel movement members also supported the temperance movement. Temperance. Now, if you look over here on the right in this picture, you'll see ladies that were also promoting that idea. Now, what was the temperance movement? It was no alcohol. They didn't want any alcohol consumption in the country, and that did eventually lead to the implementation of the 18th Amendment. So make sure that you're writing down your notes, and on the left-hand side, please write down 18th Amendment. That one's really important. That's prohibition. So look up at this photograph, and it says, lips that touch liquor shall not touch ours. And notice how these are all ladies. What are they saying? Are we looking for a man that likes to drink alcohol or not? Okay, so then we also talked about all the different groups when we did the mini lessons. We went over different groups of people. We talked about progressives, and now we're looking at the socialists that came out at the same time. These are people that also wanted things to change, but were a little more extreme. The socialists wanted to end capitalism, the free enterprise system altogether. They felt like the government's laissez-faire policy had created a lot of problems, and they felt like the government should be the ones in control of all of these large corporations, these businesses, and that way they'd be able to regulate them. I know that some people will ask, what's the difference between a socialist and a communist? Now, the communist is not going to come out on your test, but I want for you guys to understand the difference between a socialist and a communist. A socialist would just want government to take over business, okay? And a communist, on the other hand, would be a little more extreme and want for the government to, by force, take not only businesses, but all private property, okay? So another group of people that you'll see in this era are muckrakers. Muck. That first part of the word muck is synonymous with like dirt or mud or yucky stuff, okay? And when, rakers. What is a rake? It's just what comes to your mind. That tool that you boys and girls should be using out in the yard to help your parents. Muckrakers. So they were collecting and gathering all the yucky stuff and actually publishing it, coming out with news reports for people to meet. These were investigative reporters, and they were calling out these people that were corrupt. They were letting the American public know about their wrongdoings. Now it's, and here you have a cartoon. If you notice down here on the bottom, it says meat. On the previous video that I had asked for you guys to watch, there was a link for a short clip on Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, and you should have watched it. If you haven't, then you need to do that, and that's why that word meat is down there, because that's what they were looking into, the process by which companies were cutting up and packaging their meats, and it was disgusting, as you saw in the video. If you look down further at the bottom, there's scandals. So the muckraker is also collecting information having to do with various scandals. And if you look up at the top, the guy who's holding the rake is Teddy Roosevelt. Notice that he's holding his nose. It stinks. All of this stuff was yucky, and his rake says investigations. There were many muckrakers, actually. A few of the ones that we're going to go over are Ida Tarbell, and I apologize, I should have had her video up here. Here we go. Ida B. Wells, Ida Tarbell, Lincoln Steffens, and Frank Norris. Okay, the last slide that you saw was not part of what I intended to show you, so I'm skipping over here to this next area, and you'll see the famous muckrakers that you will be expected to know put here. Now, Jacob Riis, that was your homework, and that's where he was looking at the different ethnicities living in the overcrowded American cities, how the other half lives. Ida Tarbell, her history of the Standard Oil Company. Now, as soon as you see that word oil, if Rockefeller didn't pop straight into your mind, then you need to look over your things again. The Standard Oil Company was showing how Rockefeller's rise was based on ruthless business practices. Lincoln Steffens exposed city and state corruptions. The Octopus. Now, in The Octopus, Frank Norris, it was a fictional story about how railroads were strangling California farmers. And last but not least, Upton Sinclair, The Jungle, and remember the video on that. Okay, so that's the end of video 2, and please be ready to work hard tomorrow. See you then. Bye-bye.